Hello everyone, this is RaySpace and welcome back to Realism Overhaul Sandbox in Kerbal Space Program 1.12, where I think I have fixed my issues with SLS Block II from Artemis Construction Kit and the RO configurations from Sky Phoenix 999. And the main issue was with the plumes on the Bola boosters, and the way I've fixed it is to go back to the previous version of the RO configs for the SLS from Artemis Construction Kit, so version 1.2, and those had the plumes working just fine, and then take the numbers from version 1.3, which had the updated numbers, that was the main changes that we had in the changelog, and put those numbers into version 1.2. Thus, I got plumes that work, and also the right numbers. So, what we have is, but I have adjusted those numbers somewhat, because I had talked about that in the previous video. I was dissatisfied with exactly the numbers that we had, but I made sure that we had the right amount of HTPB, that we have the right dry masses, both for the boosters as well as for EUS. That had changed for EUS. EUS, the dry mass had changed, and also the fuel quantity had changed. Right now we're underfueled to 50%. And so the normal fuel load is 127 tons, and I only have it at 63.3. However, if we take a look at EUS in here, we'll see that it's the correct load plus the dry mass that it's supposed to have. So there it is. Oop. So that's the correct amount, and it has the correct RCS thruster stuff as well, so that had been fixed. And so yeah. We have the correct amount for that. It's just that I needed the plumes fixed, and this was the best way to fix the plumes. So the numbers are correct, and with these, but I should remind people that in the previous video I decided to bump up the max thrust to 17,000 kilonewtons to ensure that at some point in the launch we reach the actual 4 million pounds of thrust that they're supposed to have. I'm assuming that that is the max thrust. I mean, it is the stated max thrust, and I assume that max thrust is actually achieved in flight. I mean, this might be naive of me, but my assumption is that they actually do reach the 4 million pounds of thrust in flight, if not on the ground. And on the ground would be more lax. This is stricter. This is more conservative. And I also reduced the ISP from 280 to 276.6, which I thought was a little bit more accurate. I've upped the thrust, and I have nerfed the specific impulse. That is what it amounts to. And the propellant is the same. The net result of that means that it burns for less time, but it seemed to be burning for too long anyway. I have not adjusted the thrust curve. I copied the thrust curve from version 1.3. So the newest version of the configurations from Sky Phoenix 999, that thrust curve is what I'm using. So we've got all that, and with this EUS underfueled to 50%, we can get the 130 tons to low Earth orbit. And so that's good. I'll show that in a sec. But in this video, I'm not only going to test that, I am also going to test how much the core alone without EUS can get to lower orbit. Because if we keep underfueling this, and it seems to get better results with less fuel, eventually you get to the point where we might as well not have that stage at all. Right now, we're only getting 1,555 meters per second from that stage. If we take that stage off, this has 9,106, so we could probably underdo this by a little and still manage to make it work. Now the core won't be as overburdened, and the thrust-to-weight ratio will help, and maybe with 9,106 we might even get to orbit if we don't have to delay for the extra 10 minutes. So we will see a test about that after we test the 130 tons. Alright, so here we go. Engage autopilot and go. Alright, for now it seems to be indicating that we have enough, but that number is going down. We are past the speed of sound. Let's take a look at the thrust here. So 4 million pounds of thrust would be 17,800 kilonewtons. We're still on the bit where the number is going up because we're getting higher specific impulse. So we're sort of hovering around that 17,800 number. So at 400 I'll manually separate it. So we're still burning for a little bit longer than I'd like. Okay, off go the fairings. And dumping the fairings has given us a better margin to orbit. So now we seem to be getting about 42 meters per second left. Alright, so we are on the EUS now. It's reading that we'll have enough delta V. So we've got a 10 minute and 30 second burn time now, so half of what it normally has. And it's underfueled in order to be able to get this 130 ton payload to orbit. And that's the prescribed orbit with 90 meters per second left, which is fine. Let us go back and verify that that was 130 tons, and then make even less use of EUS and see what happens. Will we get even more than 90 meters per second? Not 90 million, 90 meters per second. We're gonna cut it to 25% of its total capacity. And then see what happens. Maybe we won't have enough delta V then. Oh, we might as well take a look at what happens to the delta V stats. Right now... Okay, so hold on, let me bring it back. In theory, I don't think it should make orbit with how much we have, but... Okay, let me fill it back up again. So, 9,491 is what we have with the 10 minute and 36 second burn time on the EUS. Half full. So a quarter full, we only get 9,155. So that doesn't seem like it's gonna be enough, and probably it isn't. But let's see what happens. And then we'll see what the core alone can do. Well, core alone plus boosters. No EUS. Alright. So, much less delta V. Let's just see. So I'm not expecting this to make orbit, but it'll be interesting to see how far short it is with only a quarter full EUS. Still carrying the maximum payload to orbit, 130 tons. Based on my testing, there's no way this is carrying more than 130 tons convincingly. Off we go. Alright, the core is done. We're falling 45 meters per second short, so still pretty close. Which does suggest that the core without the EUS might be able to do a fair bit. This time it went to 200 and it's gonna raise it to 180 on the opposite side. That's a little bit less efficient. But in any case, we end up where we are, and we fell short by about that 45 meters per second. So this is not good enough, but alright. What can we do without EUS? A cheapy SLS, if you will. I don't know if the core has a controller on it. I mean in real life, not in here. Now, we wouldn't really want the core to do this because then it would make orbit. So, in this case, we want the payload to be something that also has its own propulsion to complete orbit. But for now, we'll just see if the core can cleanly put it into orbit as it is. Right now, it doesn't seem like it can do 130 tons, but that's fair enough. Let's try and reduce this. Can't do 120 tons to orbit. Seems like it'd be worth it not to have EUS on it if it can do 120 tons, right? Okay, well, we probably don't need to go as steeply, but I'll just start it off with the same trajectory and let it figure it out. Okay, with the fairings off, we have 116 meters per second to spare, which would be a good margin. I wouldn't push the payload more than that, but it is creeping up, so we'll see. Okay, 161 meters per second left, so there's some additional possibility there, but not much. 120 tons to orbit without EUS. So EUS, that's a lot of extra money just to get 10 tons extra to LEO. Of course, the rocket isn't meant for LEO. It's just, if we were ever to use it for LEO, is it even worthwhile? Also, there's the time it takes out of our lives. It takes more time to get it to orbit. But let's say we wanted to use that 160 meters per second. So we can go down. It's amazing. We're at 9,272. So we're saying that we can go down to 9,112. But probably we want some buffer on that. We can probably do that much. So maybe 125 tons. That's remarkable. If with EUS it can only do 130. And then here we can do 125. It shows that EUS is really not meant for this sort of purpose. It is only meant for going to far off locations. That's why it's the exploration upper stage. But okay, I think we have our answers here. We can get 120 to 125. So with that, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do press like. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below. And I'll see you next time.